2 defender ally units. How does she determine who gets buffed? Who gets the HP buff? Wait, what? Scrutiny. Oh, are you kidding me? It's not even. We didn't even get it. Is it RNG? Oh my god. So there's not even a consistency. I was expecting, it goes from left to right, like that's how it's like a lot of things have been. Yeah, so if you want to use her, you would use her with 2 defender units, sure. So she buffs attack. 2 defender, don't tell me that's RNG too. So the glance buff, glance right there. So Crow didn't get glance. Oh wait, no, Crow gets glance because of RNG. Okay, I'll wait 3 seconds until it's gone. Okay. Who got it? Glance. No glance on 2B. No glance. Or glance on Crow. So it... And then if I hit again... Did 2B get it? No, 2B didn't even get it still. So Narrow and Crow again got it. Okay. Okay, now she got it. You have RNG on the skill 2, that 2 defender units, and then RNG also on here. Oh, and by the way, right, that 3%, right, based on her attack, it's 23991. So plus 3000 attack multiplied by 2B's multiplier. Yeah, 185. Yeah. So no special like crazy shenanigans here that's happening that's like different from like the skill description. So basically whatever the attack that shows here, that's the buff that she's gonna give. Okay, let's give a proper perspective, right? Okay, because like people are gonna be like, oh, 2B's like 2B's like max LB, but let's say we are core 7 2B. Let's say we had a core 7 Quiry also. So if we have a core 7 Quiry, which is like basically the supporter gear, right here, supporter gear. So let's put it to perspective here. So that's like a support, and full gear core 7 also, because she's a support, and they have, if they have the same like typing, they have basically the same. And then what's the max stats for her? 5.81, 7k attack. And for a defender that's core 7, they only have 100k attack. Put it in perspective. So that's like 7. So basically they're getting a 7% attack increase. Well, not 7%. Oh yeah. So it's 7% attack buff. So think of it essentially as, let's say, with all units that are maxed out, again, just put it to perspective, because I can show a defender that's also okay. So like a defender that doesn't have any gear, like they only have like 72k attack, right? Like, so if they have like 72k attack at level 421, and then Quiry, and she has 90k attack, so 90,000 times 0.0581, she has 5,000. She gives 5,000 attack. And in that perspective, for defenders that are also similarly 0 LB, they have 72k. Yeah, 7%. So what Quiry ends up doing is she will end up basically giving that character, not including the gears, but because eventually at like higher level, once you keep getting stronger and stronger, eventually that buff will kind of be more based on your base stats rather than your gear, because the gears, if you guys don't know, like these are flat stats that increase. So at lower levels the overloads matter a lot, but like at higher levels, like the effect of what they really provide gets smushed out, like it becomes less. So going back to that point here, this skill 1 that is a buff is essentially a 7% attack buff. Imagine basically it's even worse than a Drake. So like, because like Drake at max level, right? Like if we look at Drake's buff, right? This skill 1 is 11.85% attack. But what ends up happening for Quiry is she ends up essentially buffing them 7%. And that's at max level 10. You know what Drake is at level 4? 8.62%. So like a level 4 skill 1 on Drake would give more attack than this very specialized that only applies to defender. Like this only applies to 2 defenders, so it's not even buffing the entire team. Like I said, this skill 1 was basically negligible. And it's only for 3 seconds. Well, okay, the plus side on this is it has more uptime. Sure. Yeah, sure. But it's 7% attack essentially. So this, you know, with all things considered, with all the gears, max level and stuff like that, this ends up being equivalent to a 7% attack buff. Again, for like units, or for 2B, which is basically the primary defender in here, that is offensive. Attack buffs are pretty much useless. I already talked about it because she gets so much attack buff from her HP buff that's coming from her skill 2. It's clearly not going to be really meant for 2B. And it's not like 2B has a buff, increased critical damage. So it's not really like good for 2B anyways. The HP scaling, for now, I can't really see someone benefiting off it, especially with the current roster. So here's the thing. Yeah, so with the current roster, it's hard. Now, if we are on full copium, and if you are on full copium, like, you know, there's a comment I saw. Quiry ends up being crucial for Red Hood because Red Hood ends up being defender. Yeah, listen, chat. Like right now, majority of the DPS is on burst 3. Actually, Noir, yeah, Noir, Privity. Yeah, so there's technically some support DPS on, or support burst 3s, right? Yeah, if really anything, it's more about like this heal on burst 3 position. But if I have to tell you something, one thing is like she has to burst. So I guess it's more like in situations where you don't always want to heal and you want to spot heal, and then basically she will buff the HP and this attack. Yeah, what situation is that, right? Because like clearly this crit rate buff is not really, like right now with the current units, there's almost like no one that's like going to be greatly benefiting off it. Yeah, it's a heal bursty, but it's meh. Yeah, and here's the thing, right? If you need the healer, I would rather have a healer that doesn't occupy that burst 3 position. Like for example, when I was doing solo raid and I needed a healer, I actually used Summer Mary. Summer Mary was very good, consistent healer throughout the fight because you don't have to burst with her to heal. And it's like a consistent like heal that basically keeps my A2 topped off. Some people use Pepper, right? But you know, they use Pepper because they wanted more DPS on and also, you know, that like they need the position for burst 1. So that's where Pepper came in. So for me, I used Summer Mary just to kind of, it was easier keeping up my A2 there. And because I wanted to use Miranda, that's why. Again, very copium unit. I think people that wanted to pull her just for collection or lobby, there you go. I can see why you guys would do that. But with the current roster, no. Future roster, who knows? Because like, for example, okay, just to give an example, like I talked about it earlier, but Masked, right? Masked, when she first came out, we actually thought that she was only gonna be used in, units because on guillotine and scarlet, mask wasn't really heavily recommended back then. If you look at now, she ended up being pretty much like used with 2B. 2B's core buffer, burst 2 buffer is masked actually, and people like it, prefer it rather than like novel, because like if you use novel with 2B, you have to do this weird delay on the burst and it doesn't feel that great. And but then if you use masked, you can just spam burst, right? It was just a lot easier to play with. Yeah, so I think for people that don't want to take their chances, right, like I can see it, like I can only really see competitive people pulling to get copies of her just so that if for some reason there's like a future unit that would actually greatly benefit off it. But again, the buff from skill 1, it ends up just being like a 7%. It could be more if there's like more discrepancy between like your Quiry and your defender. Well, where your Quiry was more invested than the defender. And then the HP is, it's not that much either too. It's not to an amount that actually feels significant. You compare that to like say masked, right? God, we're coming back to masked again. But masked is just so good for different reasons, right? She has a HP that's 74% buff, but it's 7 seconds, sure. Yeah, sure. But how often do you buff yourself? It's like, and where does your majority of your damage come from? There's a better, usually most of your damage comes during full burst, and you don't spend that much on non-full burst. So right, that 7 seconds is gonna be during full burst, so you have like these bonus multipliers that adds up, because you do get like a bonus damage multiplier when you're in full burst. And then your burst also happens, which does damage like 2Bs, right? And so this 74% happens at a more crucial time. Like, it doesn't matter if your buff is that 30 for like permanent throughout the fight. Like, sure, you have more uptime, but the amount also matters. And this 10% at max skill level is very, very low. Yeah, it's just not that great. She's cooking with low heat. That is basically it. 11%. But yeah, that's Quiry's review. It's, are you coping that you want to hope that there's gonna be future units that would get used with Quiry? Yeah, that's your answer if you want to pull or not, if you want to cope with that. But again, this attack buff not very significant, but it's a very high uptime, right? It's almost, these two are high uptimes, but at the same time also you gotta consider the uptime during non-full burst is not as significant, because you know there's no additional multipliers, right? Maybe eventually they're planning to set up a team comp where the DPS is from burst 1 and burst 2, and then on burst 3 are the supports. But even then, you need supports on position 3 that is as good as burst 1 and burst 2 unit. And you know what other burst 1 and burst 2 units that you are competing with in terms of support capabilities? Yeah, you flip the formula, B1 DPS, yeah. Yeah, well, see, if that's the case, you know, we need better numbers here. Again, it's right now, it's like it's a niche use, if at all. And we're just coping for like a good unit, since she's gonna be in the wish list eventually, right? Like eventually she's gonna be in the wish list, so might as well just like grab her through the wish list, I guess. No, I don't want any more good units. Yeah, honestly, this is a good breeder, right? I think Shift Us heard us when they like, we need a breeder, because it was like meta units back to back. There were like so much meta units back to back, and we just kind of needed a breeder because it just, if we have to keep pulling for each new unit, we need some filler units. Easy skip banner, yeah. Again, like her usage is very restrictive. The ones that I personally like recommend to pull, right, are the units that you can use in a lot more situations, very flexible. Like those are the ones that I highly recommend. Otherwise, like if they're collab, like 2B and A2, I recommended people to pull for them because like they're collab units, we don't know, and they have like good niche on them, and when built right, they were kind of up to par to like other notable units, right? Yeah, 07 for Quiry. Like what she's doing in her banner.